VAT proposed November 6th nationwide strike.
And on Good Morning Nigeria today, we focus on the state of inland water transportation.
With about 8,600 kilometers of inland waterways, Nigeria is said to have the second longest length of waterways in Africa.
That's right, Kyria. Now, 28 of Nigeria's 36 states can be accessed through water. The country can also reach 4 other African neighbors through the inland waterways.
That's really massive, Kingsley, because inland waterways offer alternative transport to road, rail, and air, thereby creating more opportunities in transportation, tourism, wealth creation, and employment.
Now, environmentalists also will argue that inland water transportation, that's to say the economic aspect of it, offers the most economical, energy efficient, and environmentally friendly means of transporting both persons and goods.
And despite the immense benefits to the economy, however, the inland water transportation in Nigeria remains untapped and has had a long history of neglect by both the public and private sectors, as little efforts were made in the past to develop inland water transportation facilities.
You're spot on again, Kyria. Now, many factors ranging from policy, consistency, limited private sector participation, to lack of facilities and conflicts among stakeholders in the management of the inland water transportation system of the country have held the subsector down for a pretty long while.
And there is, however, a new lining in the dark sky with recent initiatives by government, such as capital and infrastructure improvement, channels, dredging, construction of inland ports at Onitsha, Oguta, Lokoja, and Baro, maintenance and installation of safety equipment, as well as repositioning the regulatory agency, NEWA.
Now, the new National Transport Policy and implementation of the cabotage law, as well as the political will of the administration to revive inland and rail transportation, are seen by many as a new era in water transportation in the country.
So, what is the state of inland water transportation in Nigeria? Where are we supposed to be? Why did we fail to get there? What should be, or what should we do to advance? When should we get to that destination? And who should lead?
Well, those are very pertinent questions, Kieran, and our guests in our conversation segment will strive to provide answers to the posers as we discuss the state of inland water transportation this morning on Good Morning Nigeria. My name is Kingsley Osadolo, and I'd like to welcome you to the program, as always, reaching you on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. It's a live broadcast.
And I am Kyrian Umayo, thanking you for also joining us on this edition of the program. And as usual, we shall be presenting our companion segments, which of course will include newspaper review, business, sports, foreign, and entertainment news. But first, let's take the highlights of the news this morning with Claire Adelabo Abdulrazak. Good morning, Claire.
Good morning, Kingsley and Kieran. And indeed, it's amazing that 28 out of 36 states, that's just 8 states that are landlocked, can be accessed by water. You can imagine the volume of traffic that will be lifted off the roads if those 28 states are linked, by water. Very, very pertinent questions you have raised. But let's quickly get on with the news for this morning. We're beginning with security. And President Muhammadu Buhari has vowed to ensure that all those responsible directly or indirectly for the latest violence in Kaduna and other parts of the country are fished out and dealt with decisively. Now, the president stated this while addressing traditional rulers, religious and political leaders, as well as other stakeholders in Kaduna during a condolence visit. While demanding an end to the wanton killings, President Buhari also read the Riot Act to the law enforcement agencies, especially the Nigeria Police, warning that laxity will no longer be condoned.
The federal government will take strongest measures possible to punish perpetrators of these crimes If in the past they got away scot-free, we shall now hold everyone to account for these latest killings.
Meanwhile, as part of efforts to strengthen the already existing peace among farmers and herders in Niger State, a 30,000-hectare grazing reserve in Bubimanga local government area is being resuscitated with an initial investment of 200 million naira. Now, that was the outcome of a stakeholders meeting between the governor and various Fulani groups in that state.
Their concerns will be addressed within the Bobi Grazing Reserve. So it's mostly around education, veterinary services, pasture for their cattle.
And the Federal Capital Territory Police Command has arrested 400 members of the El Zakzaki Shiite movement with 31 bottles of petrol bombs as well as other dangerous weapons. In a press briefing, Commissioner of Police, FCT, Bala Chiroma, said the group without provocation went on rampage and buttoned down a police rapid response squad patrol vehicle deployed at Ademola Tokumbo Crescent here in Abuja.
To cause mayhem and attack innocent citizens, including law enforcement agents deployed to protect lives and properties. He ran out of luck when vigilant policemen on duty at the point upon reasonable suspicion intercepted the cab, conducted a search on the only bag in the car which had in it the improvised bomb devices. The suspect will be arraigned in court as soon as investigation is concluded.
And in the meantime, the Nigerian Army has cleared the air on the number of casualties following the provoked encounter between the Shiite sect on Monday at Kubu Karu Bridge Junction. A statement on its website said 3 members of the sect died, while 4 soldiers sustained injuries during the encounter. The sect members on Monday attacked troops deployed at a checkpoint along the road and tried to force their way into the city center. They threw canisters with fuel, stones, and dangerous weapons, which were repelled by the army. And to other stories now, success, they say, is by choice, but it is one which can only be achieved through the demonstration of a high sense of moral values. And that's why Vice President Yemi Osinbajo, as he calls on Nigerians to be shining role models to upcoming young people to realize a country of their dreams. That was at a nation-building workshop in Abuja, organized by the Apostles in Marketplace, which is a network of Christian leaders.
It is the righteous that is commanded, go and disciple the nations. In other words, everything that is wrong is awaiting the revealing of the sons of God, is awaiting the righteous to do something. Everything that is wrong, everything that's wrong with our society is waiting, just waiting for the righteous to take action.
And members of the Tripartite Committee on National Minimum Wage, which comprise state governors, federal ministers, labor unions, organized private sector, are putting heads together to present a common front on the minimum wage for Nigerian workers. Key members of the committee, which include some state governors, Minister of Labor, Chris Ngige, Minister of National Planning, Udo Udoma, and representatives from the Salaries and Wages Commission, will soon come up with a unified position on the matter. The meeting held at the Secretariat of the Nigerian Governors Forum is to ensure industrial harmony and avert the proposed November 6 strike by Labour. Jigawa State Government and the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency, NDLEA, are to collaborate in the establishment of Drug Audits Rehabilitation Center to mitigate the negative effect of drug abuse in the state. This was the thrust of discussions at a stakeholders meeting against the menace in Dutse, the state capital.
Even if 10 lives are saved each week, or 10, 20 each month, this is still better than nothing. But the progress report has shown that you've all gone extra mile to touch the lives of your people.
And do catch up with more news later today at 10 o'clock. But don't go away. Focus today is on Niwa. Kingsley and Kieran will be back in a short while.
And you're tuned to Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. Now time for business. World Bank releases 2019 Ease of Doing Business ranking today. Where will Nigeria rank? Let's join Comfort Amodu on Business News for details and even more.
The continuous effort by the present administration to revive the country's ailing refineries to meet growing domestic demand for petroleum products is yielding result as Nigeria is currently ranked the second global refinery capacity after China. The rating by Global Data projects Nigeria to expand its crude distillation units capacity by 2.003 million barrels per day at $57.6 billion, with China leading the global refinery capacity expansion and investment with 3.12 million barrels per day, with additional refining capacity and $67.3 billion capital expenditure through 2022. As a result, the world's refining capacity is projected to grow by 15.1% between 2018 and 2022, with global crude distillation units and capacity projected to hit 117 million barrels per day. And now, Seychelles launches world's first sovereign blue bond, a financial instrument designed to support sustainable marine and fisheries projects. The World Bank assisted developing blue bond, which raised $15 million from international investors, demonstrates the potential for countries to harness capital markets for financing the sustainable use of marine resources. Meanwhile, the monthly distribution by the Federation Account Allocation Committee FAC to the three tiers of government in October total 699 billion naira, a reduction of 43 billion naira from the previous month's distribution following a drop in oil price from 77.1 to $75.1 billion, according to Federal Ministry of Finance. Sea stained with oil, the Nigerian Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative, NIAT, says the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, NNPC, and its subsidiary Nigerian Petroleum Development Company and other companies in the oil and gas sector are yet to remit $22.06 billion and 481.75 billion naira into the Federation account. It insists that the corporation have failed to remit earnings from oil and gas producing companies worth 5.2 billion naira and $152.69 million, with an additional $498.6 million revenue from offshore processing contracts. And next is closing figures of stocks on the floor of the exchange. And that ends business news. Good Morning Nigeria continues. I'm Comfort Amodu. Thanks for watching.
All right, thank you very much, Comfort, for the business package. Next for us now is a review of the headlines on the front pages of some of today's newspapers. All right, as always, our newspaper reviewer, Bayo Atoyebe, is right here with us in the studios. Bayo, good morning and welcome to the program.
Thank you, Kinsley. Good morning.
Yeah, Bayo, you're welcome.
Thank you. Good morning.
Now, Kinsley, let's begin with the Daily Trust. Daily Trust, below the nameplate of Daily Trust this morning, minimum wage. Governors offer 22,500 naira as labor protest. Now, that story is on page 3. No plan to review fuel price, NNPC says. Details can be found on page 17 of the Daily Trust. Now, President hosts aggrieved APC aspirants. And the lead story this morning on Daily Trust is a Kaduna crisis. Perpetrators won't go scot-free, says President Buhari, with a rider community members to pay for damages, says Erufai, the governor of Kaduna State. Kingsley.
All right, let's also take a look at the front page of the Punch newspaper. The lead story is on the ongoing negotiations of a new national minimum wage, and that's the kicker for that headline. We can only pay 22,500 naira, governors tell workers. We can only pay 22,500 naira, governors tell workers. With a rider, NLC, TUC members protest nationwide. And then, still on the minimum wage, let's come to the foot of the front page of the New Telegraph, because there's another story there on the minimum wage. Labor, that's the kicker for it. No minimum wage, no elections. With two riders, governors, we can't pay more than 22,500. Bayelsa, Edo, and Delta agree to pay 30,000 naira. Details of that story can be found on pages 5 and 7 of the New Telegraph. But still also on the new minimum wage, this time we're coming back to the Punch newspaper. Above the nameplate of the Punch, one of the 4 headlines there above the headline, above the nameplate, says, I'll pay any amount adopted as minimum wage. That's according to Otom, that's the governor of Benue State. Any amount adopted as minimum wage. Benue governor says he will pay. Details on page 10. Bio.
Well, let's start with the president's visit to Kaduna yesterday.
I thought we were going to start from Benue, but I saw it's all right. Let's security issues. Fantastic.
Yes, security issues, and it's very paramount because the president warned yesterday that security agencies must hunt and bring perpetrators to justice. And he said that those who were used to going scot-free after killing people all over must now answer for their crime. He said Kaduna must not end itself another name as the home of violence. He also commended the Kaduna State government for the way they handled the crisis. But he said individuals and communities must respect the rights of others. They must learn to live wherever they choose to, and they must also worship freely. They must learn to listen to each other and resolve their differences through peaceful means. Meanwhile, the police command has also announced that they have arrested as many as 93 suspects. Already, the suspects that were alleged to have been involved in the killing of the Agom of Adara, some of them have also been arrested and investigations have been deepened. The police says that some suspects have been, 93 suspects, of the 93 suspects that were arrested, 43 have been prosecuted and 50 others are being investigated. And the Inspector General of Police says that no stones will be left unturned in reaching the persons who are behind it and their sponsors, and they will be brought to book. Now, the big talk of the day, or in fact of the nation, that is the minimum wage. Governors met yesterday. This was when they were briefed by their 6 colleagues who represented them on the tripartite meeting. And after that meeting, they issued a communique by the chairman of the Governors Forum, and he says specifically 22,500 is what the state governors have agreed across board they can afford to pay. And he said that they reached that decision after a due consideration of certain factors, that of the percentage of salary workers constitute only 5% of the population. They also considered the sustainability of payment. If you start, can you continue to pay? And they also considered the need to balance, the need to pay worker salary and also have results for the development in the states. Labour has kicked and says that as far as they are concerned, the tripartite meeting they held reached a consensus which was based on ILO standard, and 30,000 has been agreed. And Labour is lamenting. President Ayuba Waba says that, what have we done to the political elite that they cannot pay us 30,000 naira? And he says that during the review of the recent political office holder, their own take-home was reviewed 900% upwards. Boboe Kaigama says that they should give us equivalent of 18,000 5 years ago. That on the dollar equivalent was about 150, naira to dollar was about 150 then, and they were getting 18,000. Today, the 18,000 is equivalent of $50, far, far less than what they have taken. And so, as far as they are concerned, there's no going back. He said, our struggle for 30,000 naira is not negotiable, and we will meet them on February 19th at the election polls. So those are the polls. But like you indicated earlier on, some state governments have already indicated that they are ready and can pay the 30,000. They include Bayelsa, Jigawa, even Benue says any amount that is agreed will pay. And currently, there are some states, which include Edo State, that are already paying above the 18,000 naira. Edo State, I understand, is paying about 25 naira as minimum wage.
Yeah, I'm wondering, Zakira, let's take this along with what Bayo has explained. While we are reading all the stories about the negotiations and then the minimum demand being made by the parties, we haven't heard from the organized private sector. Government is not the largest employer of labor in this country. It is the private sector. What is the private sector saying?
Well, organized private sector, from information from the tripartite meeting, were the one that, in fact, muted the 30,000 naira, which Labour had to come and agree. Labour was negotiating for 38, but they later had to come down to the 30, which was said to have been the proposal by the organized private sector.
Yes. I think what is confusing about the scenario is the fact that the 6 governors met on behalf of other governors and had agreed on 22,500 naira. And now some other governors are saying that they can pay anything. Yet some of these states were in question are still owing salaries to date. So I'm wondering, how the possibility.
Let's get the facts straight. 6 governors, one from each geopolitical zone, represented the governors' forum at the tripartite meeting. And their position there was 22,500. And that was what the
baseline figure.
Yes, that was their baseline figure they took to the meeting. You see, some came in with 66,500 and they started coming down. Others came with as low as 22, some with 24 and started coming up. And some stopped at 22,500, others at 24. And Labour conceded 30 in consonance with the organized private sector.
Bayer, fine, good explanation, but the point remains
capacity,
even in the private sector. In the private sector, which employs many more persons than the government, federal, state, and local.
I agree with you, but this is the argument of Labour.
Yes.
30,000 is difficult and capacity to pay we are paying. But look at the take-home pay of the political office holders.
Those are political office holders. They are few.
But they have never failed to pay.
No, I agree with you, Bayo. But we can't measure that. Why don't you also then, I mean, I'm not saying you now, why doesn't the argument also come up to say, look, take a look at the disparity that you have in intra-public service pay.
Wages, yes.
Wages. I mean, you have certain organizations that are paying far higher than the others, and the unions in those other entities have not gone on strike.
5 times what is paid in the public service.
And it is happening in federal government parastatals, where people are earning more than others. It's an established fact. And in fact, if Labour has to fight for this, they have to fight it, for me, in totality, with respect to even what the politicians are taking home and all of that. Some people can adjust. There could be adjustments in all of this. Kenya did it. Kenya did it and reduced the pay of the legislators.
I agree.
It happened.
At the end of the day, we are all going to the same market.
Exactly.
The same market. But you go to the market on the basis of
what your pocket.
Okay, let's take a Daily Sun newspaper, the front page of Daily Sun. That's besides the Daily Sun, the nameplate. We have shared police clash in Abuja with whether all that in other papers. Then the lead story here is also on the minimum wage. On 30,000 we stand, says Labour. We will pay 22,500, say governors. All right. Now below the photograph, that's the photograph of the president meeting with the South-South PDP governors. We have stories at the foot of Daily Sun. Killings, not solution to poverty, says Buhari. It's on page 41. And he also, the writer says, federal government will prosecute perpetrators of Kaduna crisis. 2019, Seventh-day Adventist Church drags INEC, federal government, to court over Saturday voting. And nobody would like to comment on this. President, 4 PDP South-South governors meet in Aso Rock on page 7. We won't disclose details, says the governor of Bayelsa State, Dixon.
Yes.
All right, Bayo, just before you comment, let's
yes,
take these headlines along. The lead story for the New Telegraph, right near the middle of the page, there's New Telegraph. That's the lead story. It says, police arrest Shiites with 31 petrol bombs and weapons. With 3 riders, sect members burned police vehicle and vowed to continue protests. Buhari, Nigeria sliding into global irrelevance over killings. Afenifere to president, your government passive on insecurity. Details of the story can be found inside. And that story on the Shiites is also there on the front page of the Punch newspaper. It comes by way of a photograph and then another headline. So one of the 2 photographs there on the front page shows the police patrol vehicle set on fire in Abuja yesterday. That was right in the middle of the city, by the way, not in the central business district area, but in the business locations that are adjacent to the central business district. That's in Wuse 2. Now, federal government beefs up security around Aso Villa and others as Shiite security agents clashes continue. Yesterday was day 2. Police to charge 400 Shiites with terrorism, and sect members set patrol vehicle ablaze. So, Bayo, let's take those headlines.
Yes, sadly, police say they have, sadly, the clash between security agents and the members of the Islamic movement of Nigeria is ongoing. It's now entered, it started on Sunday, it persisted on Monday and Tuesday. I'm not too sure whether it will come up today because they had actually declared they were going to go on a consistent 4-day rally. Yesterday, 400 protesting members have been arrested by the police. 2 members were intercepted with what police describe as 51 bottles of petrol bombs. And now this is where the danger is coming. This is how Boko Haram started initially. Gradually in Maiduguri, they were targeting and conflicting with security agencies. Gradually, they were overpowered and they melted into the jungle and they became a big problem. Now, this Shia's crisis started, if you recall, December 2015, when the chief of army staff was on his way passing through Zaria and there was this crisis. This led to the arrest of their leader. And since then, they have an annual day which they always have a parade. But consistently, in the past 2.5 months, they have come out occasionally to carry out this public protest. And most often than not, it has always turned violent. The first one was on Sunday, and I think it was reported that about 3 persons were shot. On Monday, too, they caused a lot of gridlock. Workers, after closing, many did not get home. Many, in fact, had to track home, particularly along the Nyanya axis. There was tremendous breakdown of law and order in that angle. Yes,
Zuba area.
All that axis. Yesterday, too, again, within the city premises, along Wuse, it was. They set a vehicle ablaze, and I understand 1 person was also fatally killed. So something has to be done about this management of this crisis.
I'm wondering, Kirian, before you take the editorial, we have other headlines from the Punch. I'll take them very briefly, but I'm wondering, what would you be doing with Molotov cocktails, as those petrol bombs are called? 31 of them. That tells you that the crisis is likely to escalate. Yes. We hope that the security agencies, and indeed, those who are getting into this high mode of confrontation, can tone down, because the city can't afford this. I mean, for many years now, on account of the fact that Boko Haram has been beaten back, we haven't seen the kind of conflict that we are seeing rearing its head in the FCT. Very quickly, let's take 2 earpieces there beside the nameplate of the Punch newspaper. Federal government considering options for rescuing electricity industry. That's according to the Bureau for Public Enterprises. And right at the foot of the front page of the Punch newspaper, we have Buhari meets 4 PDP governors inside Aso Rock. 1 dies as SUV falls into river in Abuja. That's in Lokogoma area. Last year, or the year before, you remember there was...
It was last year.
Yes, a gentleman and 2 of his children that were going to school, and they swept away. So another gentleman has passed away in Lokogoma, that's in Abuja. Details on page 8. We've decimated Boko Haram, federal government insists. That's according to Lai Mohammed, Information and Culture Minister.
Yeah, 4 governors met with the president yesterday, governors of Bayelsa, Rivers, Delta, and Akwa Ibom. But I'm puzzled by 2 papers captioned as 4 PDP governors meet at Aso Rock. However, other papers say that the meeting was, they speculated the meeting was about the Supreme Court verdict and the South-South governors meet the president. However,
all right, Bayo, let's take the editorial for today, and it's taken from the Sun newspapers, page 15 of the Sun newspapers, and it's captioned "The Campaign Expenses Ceiling." The recently passed Electoral Act Amendment Bill 2010 may likely go down as one of the most debated pieces of legislation in the nation's political history. Several attempts to amend the electoral law have suffered reverses, with President Muhammadu Buhari declining assent on 3 occasions. Now that the bill is before the president for his assent, it is expected that he will oblige. And now let me take one other paragraph here before we get to Bayo. However, a major outcome of the amendment bill is the pegging of campaign expenses for both political parties and candidates. For presidential candidates, the ceiling is 5 billion naira. Gubernatorial candidates, 1 billion. Senatorial aspirants, 250 million. And there are provisions for the House of Reps and House of Assembly and other elective positions. Now, let's get to Bayo for further analysis.
Yes, you're right. What the editorial is looking at is the ceiling set for candidates, presidential, gubernatorial, and also the amount any individual can contribute to the covers of political parties for campaign. In a nutshell, the editorial is saying that this is an over-monetization of the electoral process. The implication is that unless you are well-to-do and you are rich, you cannot get into to be of service to the nation. And secondly, this is one of the impetuses that raises the political positions at higher stake, and people do not restrain themselves. They want to even kill before they can get there. What is being described as do or die affair. Therefore,
one question to ask you, Bayo, is what is the mechanism, with which to know what an individual is spending? Do we have that kind of mechanism that will now determine what one has spent in the political process?
Well, there's no mechanism, but however, a political party or a candidate is supposed to have a campaign office. That campaign office, which manages his campaign, is supposed to have accounts, and that should be audited by the INEC. And the law sets a limit, the amount in which you can spend for campaign. It's supposed to make sure that politics is not unnecessarily monetized. But the editorial is emphasizing that we are now going to have a government of the rich over the poor, and every person who have genuine intention to serve but is constrained by money cannot get access to power.
All right, Bayo Atoebe, thank you very much for being with us. For those who are interested, you find out how dogs can detect malaria parasites in clothes. That's a new telegraph. It is on page 7. So if instead of going for a test, maybe you just go near a dog and see whether you have malaria. All right, Bayo, thank you very much for being with us on the program this morning. We'll take a short break now.
And next we'll be bringing you a background report on the state of affairs the nation's inland waterways, and that report is put together by Kunle Adebayo.
Records from the Nigerian inland waterways indicate that Nigeria has 10,000-kilometer waterways with 3,000 kilometers navigable. The records further state that 28 out of the 36 states of the Federation can be accessed through water. Nigeria also has the second largest waterways in Africa, as it can access 5 other African countries of Benin Republic, Equatorial Guinea, Cameroon, Niger, and Chad through water transportation. With this huge potential in the inland water transport system of the country, experts have advised that more attention should be given to the sector by encouraging entrepreneurs to transport products through the waters. This, they say, will ease the constant pressures on the roads, which have given rise to negative consequences such as frequent auto crashes, which often lead to loss of lives and property worth millions of naira, nerve-wracking traffic gridlocks, and wearing out of the roads, among others. Coming up with policies that will promote and facilitate the use of vast inland waterways are therefore advocated. Such policies include safeguarding the waterways to curb cases of piracy and abduction of people, and constant dredging of these waterways to make them navigable. For Nigeria to have effective utilization of its abundant waterways, what are the required inputs from concerned stakeholders? Dredging of River Niger from Niger Delta to Barrow in the North Central was flagged off about 10 years ago, and it is said to be completed, but other facilities and measures to make the inland waterway productive were not completed. Now that the present administration is bent on diversifying Nigeria's economy, ease doing business and provide critical infrastructure, advocates of utilization of Nigeria's inland waterways are again raising their voices for the country to listen. What is the state of Nigerian waterways? How can the country achieve the vast potential therein? These are some of the questions guests on Good Morning Nigeria will answer shortly.
All right, Kunle Adebayo, thank you very much for that background report. We have a guest with us here in the Abuja studios, and hopefully we'll be joined by another guest from Lagos. But let's first of all welcome to our studios here Senator Olorunumbe Mamora. He's the Managing Director, National Inland Waterways. That's NIWA, with headquarters in Lokoja. Senator Mamora, a pleasure to have you in our studios.
Thank you very much for inviting me. Good morning.
All right. Also here with us is Engineer Emmanuel Ilori. He's a maritime expert. Engineer Ilori, pleasure to have you with us on the program.
Thank you very much. Good morning.
Okay, Kieran?
Yes, gentlemen, you're welcome once again to this particular edition of the program. And we'd like to congratulate Senator Mamora for his being the head of NIWA. And let me begin with you by asking you to explain to Nigerians the state of affairs of inland waterways. We recall that during the Yar'Adua administration, we had dredging as what many believed was going to open up the inland waterways in Nigeria. But unfortunately, that was not continued thereafter. Now, what is the current state of affairs in this transportation subsector?
Once again, thank you very much for inviting me. Yes, dredging. There's so much emphasis on dredging. But the truth remains that dredging is not the only thing that we need to do within the inland waterways. Yet, it's a major component in terms of navigability of the inland waterways. Because of issues of silting, issues of low water level and what have you. But that's just navigation. But even beyond dredging, there are so many other issues. You have wrecks, derelicts on the waterways, issues of safety, issues of security, issues of capacity in terms of workers, staff, who will have to put all these things in place and manage the system. You have issues of conflict with sister agencies, with other users, occupying the right of way. You have so many issues, funding and what have you. But then, there's a lot to do in terms of, you talk of the state of affairs, there is still much to be desired. And of course, it's a continuous thing. But the good news is that this present administration is changing that narrative, focusing our attention. You heard from the background report the large expanse of waterways, and you're talking of a situation where 28 states out of 36 states can be reached through waterways. And from time immemorial, waterways is a very potent source of integration. Aside trade, trading activities and all that, they go on through the waterways from that time up to this point in time. And we are talking of natural endowment. There are countries that invest so much billions of dollars, if you like, to create, artificial lakes, artificial water channels and all that. But we are endowed naturally, and yet we are not making good use of this. So the narrative is changing, and more attention is required, and of course, all the stakeholders and the players in that subsector, they need to come in and assist government in this regard.
All right, Managing Director Niwa, just to restate that a couple of weeks or so ago, Good Morning Nigeria actually discussed, of course, having guests discuss how to maximize the benefits of the blue economy. And the major focus, of course, had to do with the Nigeria's international waters. But the guests were emphatic on the interconnectivity between Nigeria's external waters and indeed the inland waterways, just as you have ticked up. But fill us in some more as to the state of our waterways and the role of NIWA in either housebanding, the benefits of our inland waterways, or otherwise regulating activities thereon.
Yes. You recall that even by the Act setting up NIWA, one of its major objectives is to determine the right of ways and, of course, develop and enhance the capacity of the waterways. Not just in terms of transportation of goods and persons. Of course, we want to make it as a very viable alternative to transportation, aside rail, road, air. And don't forget, it's very cheap, very, very cheap. It's convenient, and of course, the accessibility is there. Again, you want to take off the pressure on the road, which you heard from the background report. What we have right now in terms of the pressure on our roads, you have social, you have economic, you have health effects. Nigeria has one of the worst figures in terms of road traffic accidents. And most of this, over 90% from FRSC's report, they are caused by these heavy-duty vehicles, trailers, and tankers. And of course, you cannot even look at what is happening right now in Lagos with Apapa, where you have heavy-duty, trucks, trailers parked on the roads and causing man-hour loss. That some people some residents have moved away from that side completely. Because if it takes you 2 days to get to your residence, I mean, that is not encouraging at all. So the issue now is to now divert attention and focus more on this waterway transport.
All right, I think we'll return to you for further explanations because we Nigerians need to know and understand why it has taken so long for this subsector to be rediscovered and made viable. And let's turn to Engineer Emmanuel Ilori, who is also a maritime expert. So you listened to Senator Mamora when he listed some of the challenges confronting this transportation subsector. In your own understanding, what is the problem? Why has it become so difficult, for us to get to where we should be in the inland waterways transportation in Nigeria?
Thank you very much for bringing me on the program. We need to look at the fundamental issues about the Nigerian economy and our development. Now, if you look at the ARGP plan, I'll be surprised if you find any chapter on maritime or inland waterways transportation and development. Fundamental. Now, we're talking about interconnectivity. We have used these words time and time again. Now, we have a naturally endowed, God-given interconnectivity. 28 states can be connected by the Inland Waterways Network. What's that telling us? It's telling us that in our national planning program, we have not addressed the issue of interconnectivity and how we can reach these states and how we can develop Nigeria. We are talking about industrial development. Now let's look at where the industries are located presently. They are surrounded around the road network. If I want to build an industry, I'm going to look for a plot of land next to the expressway. Now, how is Nigeria going to develop? Now, how are you going to get the big machines onto these industries? So it's going to choke our ability to develop. Whereas we have 28 states that can be reached by the river, by the Inland Waterways Network. Therefore, we have not looked at strategically about our national development. If you take China, for example, all their industry that we go to today, most of them are situated along the river Yangtze and their maritime Inland Waterways Network. Go to England, England developed their industries around their Inland Waterways Network. Go to America, they developed around the Waterways Network. Just a few examples. So therefore, in terms of national planning, we have failed to address the fundamental issues that will aid the development of this country. That's one first issue. So we are not going to industrialize this country until we begin to address these fundamental issues. And there is the political will. That's one of the major issues. And lack of policy input in terms of maritime development. So we now have in place this present administration say, wait a minute, this country is not going to go anywhere until we have the political will to address some of these issues. I mean, I've been walking around recent times, and when they appointed Senator Mamora to the Inland Waterways Transport, we heaved a sigh of relief because we have somebody now who can reach the political network and articulate the importance of Inland Waterways Network to the development of our economy. There have been some bottlenecks where I think he raised the issue of interagency rivalry, lack of provision of funds for NIWA, and I can come to that later. So we have somebody politically who can begin to challenge the lethargy in the development of the Inland Waterways Network. Of course, there are technical dimensions there, but then Nigeria is not, there's no shortage of technical manpower at very, very high level to support the political development. But the political blockage has been there all along, which I think it's time now is being broken down. And I will need to give thanks to the present administration for addressing that particular problem. And I believe nationally we begin to see a change. It's not going to be short term, it's not going to be easy.
What was the nature, or what has been the nature of the political blockage?
Well, the political, like I just told you, that we've looked at the ARGP now, there's no mention of the maritime aspect of economic development. It's mind-boggling to hear that they developed such a document, but they have not addressed that. Industrialization, we look at it, and then it's not been addressed. So what's the national planning doing? What's the decision? What's being fed to the hierarchy about the importance of the riverways and the waterways and the aspects that the senator talked about just now? And that's what we are talking about. Now, NIWA was not given a development grant. NIWA, over time, has been choked in terms of its development. The act establishing NIWA did not even give them a takeoff grant. And we have various funds that is not accessible to NIWA. So in terms of all that, the organization responsible for the development of that important sector of the economy has not been empowered sufficiently to carry out that responsibility.
And Laurie, I asked Senator Mamora the question, but I think he inadvertently sidestepped it when he was talking about some of the other larger issues. What is the role of NIWA with regard to the blue economy inland? And therefore, where does the conflict come with other agencies?
Well, encroachment and, I mean, some of the agencies, they talks about IGR. Everybody wants to IGR, wherever you go is IGR, IGR, IGR. But they fail to address the importance of that IGR to national economic development. Now, NIWA is saddled with safety, security, and the economic derivatives deriving from our inland waterways network. That's the summary of their role. Now, when we talk about inland ports and development of port areas in terms of our economic development, they have been choked in terms of being able to provide those services. When they are in strive for fund, when they don't have the fund to do it, what do? When somebody says, okay, this is an inland waterways jetty, and somebody goes there and block that operation. When you have states encroaching on the national laws and creating their own laws outside the national constitution, it's a major problem. You begin to say, one of the states said they have repealed the National Inland Waterways Act.
Which state is that?
Well,
I mean, it should be in the public domain.
Exactly.
If they won't do it. Which state is that?
Well, we have Lagos State, yes. We have Cross River State. So they have repealed the National Inland Waterways Act.
I see. Now, so Mora, you were Speaker of Lagos House of Assembly. Was it during your time?
It couldn't have been. And it never was.
Still on the rule of NIWA, and you have all agreed that there is a kind of an interagency rivalry and other challenges, especially access to waterways. But all that amounts to fight or battle for the control of inland waterways. Now, under normal circumstances, and from what Engineer Lorry did say, constitutionally, who should be in control of the nation's inland waterways?
It's NIWA. Pure and simple. I mean, you cannot debate that. It's NIWA. You see, the thing is this. Even when you consider the arms of government, you still have some degree of what appears to be overlapping of functions or roles at the level of arms of government. So it's not unusual to have some degree of overlap. But important thing is to you just work within your own space. And of course, you can still have collaboration. That is the issue. You can still have collaboration, not seeking to have a territorial control and moving out of your own terrain and all that. So you have that, and this can be sorted out with understanding, with synergy, with collaboration, because at the end of the day, we're all working for the good of the people. But these things happen, and the supervising ministry is there that also tends to come in to help out in this kind of situation. But
how are you tackling it at the moment? How are you tackling
dialogue? Dialogue. That's the most important thing, because you cannot, particularly as agencies under the same administration, under the same government, you can't start to resort to court actions and what have you, and that will stall, the whole process because of the process of justice administration. But you just need to dialogue, and then you work within your boundaries.
Let me ask this question again, Senator Mamora. What is the role, what is the defined role, say, of the federal government, in this case through NIWA? What is the role of state governments? And then what is the role of the private sector? Because sometimes you hear of private jetties, and indeed, we do know that there are all kinds of boats and services operating from private jetties. So what is the respective role? And then who oversights all of them? And what is the extent of the powers of the authority? Presumably that would be NIWA.
Yeah. Now, when you look at the act setting up NIWA, it's clear that the control, the development, the determination of the right-of-ways are functions given to NIWA. So any and every other agency or body that wants to operate within that will have to go through it. That's why NIWA has its own police. to enforce, because we determine levies, we determine routes, navigation routes and what have you. We determine this as a parastatal, as an agency in government. And then the levies which we take, we also look at the other activities along the right of way. For example, the bulk of the exploratory activities of the oil companies take place along newest right of way. And that, of course, could result in the pollution and what have you. So we also have to take charge of it, because we are supposed to maintain this right of way and channels. Then you have fishing activities. You even have some tourism activities that go on along this. We are to determine, and to, of course, if take for example the issue of mining. Somebody goes to the Ministry of Solid Minerals to get a permit to mine sand. Fine. But we have a duty to determine to what extent, because of the issues of environmental impact. So we always need to have environmental impact assessment done before, during, and after. Because once you mine, you're going to create some ecological issue which has to be followed up. It is the duty of NEWA. So it's such a complex thing, and that is why we need this collaboration. So the Ministry of Solid Minerals cannot just say, we have given you license, and then it's just, we have to monitor the effect, because this will result in issues of shoreline encroachment. Then we talk of water training. Water training, because if you don't train the water in terms of managing the depth to achieve appropriate conditions for navigation, then you are already putting those who are applying the place at risk. There are also issues of even criminality along this, which is also the duty of NEWA to check. In fact, the critical issues must be security and safety, because if you don't have security and safety along this, you cannot have navigation. Yes.
Okay, let's return to Engineer Emmanuel Ilore. What is the role of the private sector in the development of the nation's inland waterway transportation system? Because in all of this, if the business should be viable, then the private sector should be part of its development. So what is the situation like with respect to government, private sector collaboration in developing the sector?
Like I will say just now in one of your reports, you said Nigeria has about 10,000 kilometers of inland waterways. That's a lot. Think about the river banks, the right-of-way. So when you want to cite your industry, not just short-term, medium and long-term, you want to cite your industry in an area where you can grow, where you can be accessible. So the role of private sector in this business cannot be overemphasized. We are talking of a multi-trillion naira industry. But the fact that politically we have not given the right priority to the inland waterways part of our economy is driving away investors. Because when you think about the inland waterways, you want to think about accessibility after that network. It's an integrated system. When we talk about intermodalism, the word has been used so much in Nigeria that I forget, people will tend to forget what it means in real terms. So if you look at the network itself, we have the waterways there. But the connection between the waterways network and the other parts of transportation and the infrastructure, they're not there. So the private sector will find the easiest means, because at the end of the day, is their baseline that will determine what they want to do. So it's something we need to revisit holistically and then draw a very viable and sustainable roadmap for our national industrial development. If you look at job creation alone, think of the network of the waterways and the industries that we can site there, and how the various communities can be empowered, how we can take these youths out of employment, how we can reduce urban migration. Because one of the problems we have in Nigeria is urban migration, simply because the rural areas are not economically viable. So they run to the urban sectors, and of course that creates other problems within the cities. But if we look at these 28 states connected by the riverine sector, then we can start to develop that. A population of now nearly 200 million, that's a lot that we can do with that population. And the fact that we have 28 states covered by the riverine, by the waterways, it means you can then try to redistribute that population around those states where we can then begin to put industries, and job creation is going to increase. So we need to revisit our national planning methodology so that we can have a better approach to developing this economy.
Well, I still would like to return to what we are doing in trying to get NIWA and indeed other stakeholders to energize our inland waterways transportation systems. If you take a look at two major rivers, Niger and Benue, and the tributaries, and then other major rivers that you also have where water transportation is going on, shall we say, at a very minimal level. What is required to energize increased utilization of water transportation? I'll come to the issue of capital and maintenance dredging later, and what happened just a few years ago. That, of course, there was capital dredging, and then the firm was using it for a while. But along the way, as Senator Mamura indicated, you will need to have facilities, you need to have ports, you need to have jetties. Whose responsibility is it, and whose ownership is it for the jetties and for the ports? Onitsha Port has been built, it's been commissioned, but it's not in use. There is a port also near Lokoja that is called Jamata. Then the other major port is up the river Niger, which is at Baro. Right. So who is supposed to kick all of this in, so that when you say, look, you take a look at one or two of our major rivers, you say, okay, fine, we can have a blue economy thriving on those ones, rather than just having petty traders who are riding in dugout boats and canoes that capsize from time to time.
Thank you very much for that question. Onitsha Port, and Onitsha being by virtue of its location and the commercial activities taking place in that area, became a priority, and we spent billions of taxpayers' money to build Onitsha Port. And you said quite rightly, what do we do? Why is Onitsha Port not active, if we want to use that word? Now, Senator Mamura raised the issue of safety and security. Now, when you are building a port, you just don't want to build a port. You need to consider all the integral activities that will make that port viable. Navigability. There's been no serious attention paid to navigability of the access rivers to Onitsha Port. So that's a priority issue that I believe that the present administration of NIWA will be addressing. Safety is an issue. Now, categorization of Onitsha Port, some will say, oh, it's a destination port, it's a transition port. It doesn't matter. But the important thing is for people to have access to Onitsha Port. If when Onitsha Port had been commissioned and it has been put into use, the revenue from Onitsha Port and the various approaches will have been sufficient to develop the other ports that you are talking about. So that, again, is an issue of planning. Maybe there have been reports that have been not accessed. Maybe there have been parochial interest. So these are issues that the present administration will now be addressing, so they can primarily, one, make Onitsha Port active. Now, there is the issue of concessioning. Sometimes we put the cart before the horse. we're talking about concessioning in a port that is not active. So you need to make the port active, and then you can see the concessioning kicking in. The Lagos ports, or the various ports in Lagos that were concessioned, they were active ports. So investors saw the opportunity there. If you are going to concession a port that is not active, most likely you'll be giving it away at a cheap price because they can only see potential. They do not see real value. So that's an issue. And then since the concessioning came on, we were talking about people are starting to write petitions and all sorts of bottlenecks in concessioning of that port. And I believe that is one of the priorities that the MD of NIWA will be addressing as part of this administration. And there are, what stops Onitsha Port from being used as it is? And then the other issue people talk about, oh, we must dig the channels to so and so level, we must widen the channels. Do we really need to? Why don't we put shallow draft vessels that can navigate from Lagos to Onitsha? But people are thinking, oh, very big, we must dredge the channel to take very, very large vessels in its place of priority. So these are some of the technical issues that will be addressed to make Onitsha Port viable.
I was wondering, when you just talked about the dredging, because when the capital dredging took place some years ago, they said they had dredged River Niger, you know, the navigable portions of it. The dredging was to accommodate the shallow draft vessels of up to 2.5 or 3 meters in depth. Now, if that was done, what still prevents, if you like, patrons from utilizing the facilities that you have there at Onitsha? I know you talked about the issues of concessions and so on and so forth. Are we getting it right, or just something is not just adding up?
Simple, it's not adding up. You need to provide the right environment for these issues to materialize. Now, when we now see the problems in Lagos, everybody's suddenly waking up. We need to start to utilize the Eastern Port because we are all stuck with the problem of Lagos. But Onitsha Port and the dredging of the access rivers, they did not actually put in place implementation plan that will enable utilization of Onitsha Port. Everyone was thinking, oh, we built Onitsha Port, we must concession it and get it going. Get the port going right first, and then people will rush to Onitsha Port. Encourage importers to use the river access and the eastern ports. Security and safety, there are some issues. Some people talk about security and security. Yes, we need to put in place an integrated monitoring and control system for the ports. These are some of the questions that investors will ask. We need to remove the wrecks from the area because we do not monitor the activities on the inland waterways network. It becomes very difficult for you to say, okay, company A, we want you to use Onitsha Port. But you will be asking me questions. Oh, wait a minute, how do I get access? I mean, because like a road, you need to be able to have charts and maps. Tell me what the chart for going to Onitsha Port is. So these are technical issues that have not been addressed. And I believe now the present administration are beginning to ask these technical questions so that we can provide the solution for the investors.
And if I may recall, the issue of Onitsha Port didn't start now. Even in the Shagari administration, I can still recall growing up in this profession when some installations were made there, commissioned by Shagari himself. Right, and we're talking about nearly 40 years now. We're still talking about Onitsha Port. And we also recall that we had a program here on the dysfunctionality of several ports in this country. And, well, in that conversation, the panelists came to agree that it is the importer that determines, where he takes his goods. Right, and because of now the navigability of the port will, of course, make an importer not to use Onitsha Port. And if dredging should be a critical aspect of making the place navigable, then why has it not been done? Well, that brings us also to the issue of capacity that Senator Mamora mentioned earlier on as one of the challenges confronting the development of inland waterways. Now, how far have you gone doing this? Getting Nigerians trained on maritime activities.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yet it's a critical area for us. For example, there is what we call the hydrological studies, hydrographic studies, of these rivers and all that, just to determine, the nature, the physical, because you need all these components, surveys and all that, and you need trained personnel to handle all these areas. And we are in short supply, no doubt. But we are looking at this. Fortunately, we've been given dispensation by the federal government to start looking at how we employ people with relevant qualifications to shore up this shortage in manpower, critical manpower in that subsector. That we are looking at. It's also important for me to state that we are not saying we can do it alone. That's why we are putting in place a very strong PPP, public-private partnership project, so that we can invite in investors that will sit down, we will look at what they want to offer us that will be in line with our own goals and objectives, and be able to now work out partnership arrangements in the best interest of our country and of our people. I think it's also important to say that one of the things we are pursuing right now is the amendment. There's an amendment bill before the National Assembly. And I want to really thank the leadership of the National Assembly, who are also helping us to ensure that that bill has a safe path, which will go a long way to helping us in terms of shoring up our revenue to be able to carry out our functions. For example, we have so many squatters along the waterfront and our route, that our right of ways, that we need that enforcement to get things right. You have squatters all over the place. We need that capacity in terms of personnel, in terms of logistics, to be able to carry out the enforcement, which is our duty as NIWA to do.
So you require additional power.
Definitely, we need that. We need to shore up our revenue base. And these are some of the areas, and we need to also reduce the potential areas of interagency conflict. These are some of the things, and of course, even to benefit, for example, there is port development levy. Who else builds ports apart from NPA and then NIWA?
Would the bill deal with the interagency conflict to
some extent, yes. And it's reduced.
That's why I asked the question earlier. Who owns Onitsha Port, even before concessioning? Who owns the Jamata City Port? Who owns or who is supposed to build the Barrow Port? Is it NPA or NIWA?
You see, what I know is that the deep sea port belongs to NPA. But any port that is situated within the inland waterways belongs to NIWA.
All right. Now, if that being the case, I was at the Jamata City Port about 5 years ago while it was still under construction. I wouldn't know whether it's been completed. I think some of the keys were being constructed at the time. But what are the low-hanging fruits for us to immediately harvest and then get into a slow and almost immediately thereafter medium steps and then the high step tempo with regard to effective utilization of our inland waterways? What are the quick wins?
Well, one of the things is the area of security and safety, because the rivers, the waterways must be secured and safe. And we are addressing that. The bill, an amendment bill before that, when passed, will enhance that, our ability to put in place security and safety, because that's very critical. You mentioned earlier on that where you have some cases of boat mishaps and all that. Again, we are increasing our ability for enlightenment of our people, And in fact, we've already put in place some measures that have to do with corporate social responsibility, you know, because we say this things all that people need to put on life jackets when on the boat. Again, whether that is adhered to or not is another thing. But we also have a duty in terms of getting the routes, clear them of wrecks. I've gone around some of our area offices. We have 20 area offices, and one of the issues, one of the major issues is wrecks
and derelicts.
On the waterways, which are very, very dangerous in navigation.
Why, Kieran, I'm sure we're going to take a short break now. When we return, Engineer Laura, I would like you to speak to this, because you've had all familiarity also with the maritime subsector. Why has dealing or clearing the wrecks and derelicts been such a challenging issue with our inland waterways? I mean, if you stand on some of the bridges in Lagos, you're just looking there, maybe somewhere around the Festac area, so you're looking at some of those canals, and you could see them. I haven't been to that part of Lagos for a while, and I consider the traffic chaos in that area. But that will be after this short break.
Thank you.
All right, it's still Good Morning Nigeria, and we're reaching you on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. Just before we went on that short break, I said I was going to ask Engineer Emmanuel Ilori to speak to why there seemed to have been the lingering issue of wrecks and derelicts on our waterways, and that's a major hindrance to navigation.
Very, very interesting question. Nigeria, they say, is sitting on a gold mine, and we don't know what to do with it. One, it's just not good removing wrecks. We need to remove the causes of wrecks. And that's one of the things that I'm sure you spend thousands of millions of naira giving contractors to remove wrecks. But without removing the causes of wrecks, it's an exercise in futility. Now, regulation, compliance, and verification is one of the primary issues. Now, inland waterway, NIWA has not been empowered enough to enforce the various regulation, compliance, and verification, which means vessels go on our waters, either international, whatever they are, that are substandard. And in the process, they will fail, and they will then become a wreck. So we need to address the fundamental issues of technical regulation, compliance, and verification. Two, removal of wrecks. What do we do with the wrecks? Very, very important. You tell the contractor, remove the wreck from A. Where is he going to put the wrecks? He's probably going to look from some very deep area, dump the wreck there. By the time they keep dumping the wreck there, of course, that's going to rise. So, which means we need to have a ship recycling facility of world standard. And we said this time and time again that Nigeria needs to develop the ship recycling facilities to international standard. I remember over 10 years ago when the new international rules of ship recycling facility was adopted. Nigeria was a prime candidate given our location in West Africa and the expense and the quantity of wrecks in our waters, both external and inland waterways waters. So if we had developed the ship recycling facility to international standard, Nigeria will be one of the leading nations in the world for steel production and trade in ship scrap metal. And that's an area of our economy that we have failed to develop. Now,
just like refuse on our roads.
Just like, yes. So these are the issues. It's not just a case removing wrecks. What do we do with the wrecks? And then because of lack of compliance with international regulations and because Nigeria has become the dumping ground for substandard vessels, we will continue to have piles and piles of wrecks in our water. So it requires a major policy change and then to engage with our entrepreneurs to look into the ship recycling facility. There's that other aspect that prevents Nigeria from exporting scrap metal, which is the dialogue that needs to take place between the supervising ministries and at the policy level, that Nigeria should be allowed to trade in scrap steel, because that's a lot of money. Spain, for example, is a big center for steel. India, Bangladesh. So what stops Nigeria from making money out of these wrecks that we have all over the place? It's like a case of, we can get a contract, go and remove wreck from A, it's going to dump it in another point B. What have we done? We have done nothing.
And another issue is why the wrecks in the first place? Is there no way of ensuring that we don't have these wrecks as much as we do have them in our waterways? And this issue will also prompt me to ask you about the infrastructural facilities available to NIWA to carry out its responsibilities. And we're talking about wrecks and what have you, which is very dangerous. Just last week or thereabout, we heard about a boat mishap in Benue State that took so many lives. And likewise, other riverine communities.
In Kebbi State,
in
for
Kebbi
instance,
State,
yes.
Exactly. So now, what about the infrastructure? Oh, because from all indications, we were talking holistically about how to revamp the Nigerian inland waterways, which have suffered a long history of neglect in this country. And now you're talking about wrecks, which is an advanced aspect of this, having the capacity to recycle, ship metals. Is not a mean thing.
Nobody. I don't think we've considered that on Good Morning Nigeria in the past, Kieran. Yes. All right.
Well, like Riley said, we are also concerned because one of the things we do is advocacy, to our people in various communities, in various locations that engage in, low-level, quote-unquote, navigation on these boats and all that. One of the things we tell them, which I mentioned before, they need to have a life jacket, which when we conduct advocacy program, we even give out free to these communities or these areas where we have them. Again, is to advise against night navigation, because as even you are driving in the night on the road yourself.
But many prefer to travel at night.
But the dangers are there, because what you can see easily during daytime, you don't easily see at night time. That's the truth. That is also an issue. Of course, there is also the issue of the nature, because that's one of the things we do. We need to approve even the vessels or boats or whatever that ply this route. We want to be sure that are they in conformity with the standards expected or not. But don't forget, again, there are times when people want to circumvent. And but one of the challenges, we need that capacity to be able to monitor, to apprehend, because we must certify these vessels.
In fact, the accident that occurred on the Benue River, they said it was probably a toddler or a kid who was paddling either the canoe or the boat. The boat driver was said to have been an underage person. So that leads me to the question that, additional to what my colleague asked you. What is the state of your 20 zonal offices? How functional are they to undertake even some of the most rudimentary functions of NIWA?
Yes, that's a good question. That's why we talked earlier on of the issues of logistics, the issue of capacity. Because this state of, these area offices, they are not at the same level. For example, the area office in Lagos, the area office in Port Harcourt, the area office in Calabar, the area office in Onitsha, the area office in Warri, these are more functional area office because of the capacity that they have, as opposed to some of these other areas. But again, one of the challenges is logistics, particularly in terms of operational vehicles, logistics in terms of even getting the enforcement agents to be able to do patrol vehicles and all that. Ordinarily, again, we're supposed to have And if you just have in probably a few places,
and those
ambulance, you know, what you call the boat ambulance, which should be there just in case, at least some kind of first aid can be given while you know, on the waters. And of course, the patrol boats not just for the newer staff and enforcement agents, but even for the newer police, because they also, you know, work. They are there for us and work with us. But
they are not there for now. Okay, right. So, thank you, sir. You know, it's been a very important topic that we're addressing this morning, because when it comes to transportation sector as a whole, inland waterways plays a key role. Many communities are living along waterways, and we have also raised this morning that we have to 28 states that are affected. Right, and Nigerians are beginning to respond to this conversation by way of tweets, and it's important that we take a look at what some Nigerians are saying with respect to this conversation on Good Morning Nigeria. Well, from Dele Jack Solomon, the Nigerian inland waterways' huge infrastructure deficit has thrown up opportunities for investment in virtually all physical infrastructure and resources extraction in the sector, and improvement in the institutional structure and features of inland water system.
This is from Mike Anyakwa. Mike Anyakwa tweets, national development, that is imperative. And inland water transportation is a viable avenue for the movement of goods and services, especially for those living in the creeks and waterlands. And governance can also be fast-tracked to those communities.
Now, Awunuji Joshua says there is great economic potential in Nigerian inland waterways. I personally prefer using inland waterways, but without proper management, sad stories, including deaths, could be the case, just as road transportation.
All right, we have this other one coming from Dele Jack Solomon, and it says, this is Dele Jack Solomon. What is the Ministry of Water Resources and NPA doing regarding the quality of our waterways? Now, residents living along these ways, especially in Lagos, Port Harcourt, and Calabar, must be sensitized with regard to sanitary issues. I must learn how to desist from dumping refuse and other abuses. Well, the question, of course, would not go to NPA, it will go to NIWA. That's from what Senator Mamora has clarified, that inland waterways are the responsibility of NIWA.
All right, now from Chris Simeon, the sector has a lot of decays. It needs rejuvenation.
And Uche Gabriel, now the state of inland water transportation in Nigeria is low. Now the Inland Waterways Department of the Federal Ministry of Transportation would not appear to have achieved much in the years of its existence. Well, that's the reason why we are discussing the topic, to see how inland waterways transportation can be ramped up significantly. You Engineer Emmanuel Lore, you were raising a very valid point with regard to how to enhance safety on our waterways, first by removing the wrecks and derelicts, and then what to do with the wrecks and derelicts. Is there an understanding in the subsector of the immense opportunities that lie therein with regard to what is required to be done, on the one hand? That's one. Secondly, why does it appear that a number of government entities focus more on revenue generation, when the level of business activities, has not been accentuated to such a level that, in fact, when you now begin to deal with much higher numbers, the issue of chasing after the small businesses will not be one that will be of immediate concern. In other words, when you deal with higher numbers in terms of more businesses, then the revenue will come. But the primary focus will always appear to be revenue.
Well, that's a national problem, and that's probably the way we can define our nation. We always look for the small gain when we do not see the big picture. And then it comes back to the issues: what is our national interest? Where do we place our priorities? Obviously, from what we have been discussing, it can be shown that we have not addressed the issue of inland waterways transportation and its importance to our socio-economic development. It's as simple as that. All that we are talking about now is these are all derivatives of that question. So it means that we need to go back to the drawing board, one, to have the political will to implement the necessary technical solutions to make the inland waterways very viable.
All right, thank you. Time is not on our side at this moment, but let's come back to Senator Mora. Engineer Laurie has mentioned here several times that we have to go back to the drawing board. But now you have explained that the government has the will now to move that subsector forward. Now, what is the way going forward? What are your immediate priorities to see how we can return inland waterways back to a viable situation?
Well, you've had the issue of the political will coming from government, so which also encourages us. Now, I mentioned to you that we are pursuing very vigorously the amendment bill before the National Assembly. We are conscious of the fact that if that bill is not quickly passed and you have the 2019 appropriation bill coming to the National Assembly, every other thing is going to take the back burner. Secondly, for the fact that we are also moving into electioneering, government activities are likely to, undergo some lull. So we have that at the back of our mind. That's why we are pushing for it to get it passed, because it's going to help us a lot in achieving some of the things. Two is to increase our advocacy and awareness for the various communities, especially where we have area offices, and we encourage them. I've been going around, visited quite a number of our area offices to see, firsthand what the challenges are. And one of the issues is these operational vehicles for them to even carry out their activities, which we're also trying to address. Three is that we are increasing this PPP thing. Some of investors from within and outside of the country, they're already coming to have engagements with us, and we are looking at how best we will have not just what they are bringing, but that would be in tandem with our own goals and objectives as newer and in line with our the national transport policy of this country. Of course, we are reaching out to even our sister agencies, NIMASA, the NPA, and reduce the areas of conflict, and of course, with the view to collaborating, not competition. We are collaborating in the interest of our people. And of course, we are seeking the understanding of our supervising ministry as well, that's the Ministry of Transportation, to help us also, that is part of the political will that is needed, because as the supervising ministry, it's in position to also ensure that we all work in harmony.
I'm just wondering, what is there maintenance dredging of the River Niger currently ongoing?
Yes. Yes, there is. There is. In fact, we met with some group that is also interested in doing some additional dredging for us along some other routes apart from River Niger.
All right, okay, River Benue is there. That's a big capital dredging in the first instance. It's on that note, gentlemen, I would like to thank you for being part of our conversation this morning. Engineer Emmanuel Ilori, maritime expert, thank you for being with us on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you very much.
And our appreciation also to Senator Olorunibe Mamora, Managing Director, National Inland Waterways. That's NIWA, the authority responsible for inland water transportation and related matters in the country. Thank you for being with us on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you very much.
So that does it for our conversation. Let's go over very quickly now to our sports desk.
And that's Good Morning Nigeria for today. The program returns again tomorrow at 7 o'clock for a fresh package of the Good Morning Show. My name is Kirian Umayo.
And I'm Kingsley Osalolo. I join Kirian in thanking you for tuning in. Do have a wonderful day ahead of you.